Nick Austin did a bit of an interview as well, and he wrapped up the trade period and spoke a bit about the draft coming up and answered some key questions. And Pom, this is the area that you love to as well. I mean, I don't know, maybe Nick Austin's watching you, mate, because we're getting a lot of the same quotes from you and him. It's very interesting.
Same person, never been seen in the same room.
Never been seen in the same room. It seems like pick 25 will stay at pick 25. We're going to go there. And he says, we feel like with this draft and the lack of exposure, there's going to be a blanket thrown over a group of players, probably from pick 7 onwards. We've done a lot of work in that 10 to 40 range, and we feel like we're sitting in a really good spot to get a player we really like, and we'll add to our group. The next part was, how many players are we going to be selecting and what's the focus? This was interesting. So, as I said, he mentioned that we'll definitely use the first pick and then work through some upgrades potentially at the back end. We think that it's a really good draft for midfield depth and around the square types. We're still looking to improve that running capacity around the midfield and their ball use, as well as someone who can go forward and have impact in the front half. We want to look at that mid-forward group and improve that running capacity in ball use. So when I read that, or when I heard that, my first reaction was, okay, yep, makes sense, wingman. But the mid-forward comment was interesting because isn't that something we've, on the surface we have?
I think we do. What I took out that from Mr. Austin there is I think he's actually identified the missing link, and I think we do lack actual outside players. I think you look at the top teams now, that is a very specialist position that gets you away from the contest. Carlton, as a fan base, have been so poor as a club. We think inside football is important, but the top teams get the ball and get it on the outside as quickly as possible. And I agree with Austin about the talent. At the moment, the midfield outside run in Victoria, especially due to lack of game time, is sliding. There's a few players that tickle my fancy. Darcy Wilmot is a great example. 17 years old, 18 on New Year's Eve. Captain of Vic Metro. He's a baby. Dashing halfback midfield wingman. Kind of in that Doc mode. Very similar to that. But a guy that in the projection last year was top 10. Now 25 to 35. The interstate teams aren't going to touch Victorians unless they're ridiculous. So it's an exciting time because 25, I guarantee you, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, guarantee you now, one of them will be top 5 when you redraft this in 10 years.
That's where it is interesting. And that's where I guess we were happy to part with pick 6 because it meant getting a Chera in a draft for the second year where these kids have been, they have been compromised with their ability to play to their full potential because of the pandemic. But also, I'm not sure if you can answer this, but what I'd love to know is what are we using to make to get our information? Like, is it purely human beings? Is it purely subjective opinions on players and who's got the eye and whatnot, or are we using an algorithm? Are we using data? I believe only Adelaide use actual data and algorithms at the moment. Do you know much about that?
Well, top clubs, Adelaide for starters, they use the old method. They've got old guys that go out there and use their eye. They then mix that with analytical data, which is what the majority of sports do now. Analytical data produces results. And then also what they do is they have an identification of 6 or 7 key numbers that they're looking for. You've got to remember that even though Victorians haven't played a lot, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of eyes. But I mean, genuinely in 2021, you are going to find more talent using new methods than you are old. That's why the success rate in drafts worldwide now is higher than it's ever been, because maths doesn't lie. The eye lies. People get infatuated. A great example would be Joshua Cripps. The eyes and the heart lie. They see the name. They see his brother. In reality, though, as a footballer, a long way away from it. It's a bit like Henry Walsh. Met with all 18 clubs last year. No one picked him up. So a lot of the eye scouts had him going top 30. A lot of the data scouts had him undrafted. So they were right. So, I mean, it's an interesting one, but genuinely, that's how the clubs do it. They have a mixture of both. And then, obviously, Nick Austin will listen to his recruitment agents and make a decision based on that. Maybe go and see some himself, video footage, you'd hope. But it's an exciting time because I think this list in the 25s, he's right. That outside of the top talent, I would say outside of the top 6 talent, there is a blanket. Like, there is question marks about all of them. And we are taking mid-outside forwards at the highest success rate in AFL drafts at getting them right. Easy to get right.
I see. Well, I mentioned the quote here as well, where he said we work through some upgrades potentially at the back end. So don't we have to pick 3 players in the draft? Isn't that how it works?
During to COVID, they've changed it so that now is 3 picks over free agency, restricted free agent, pre-season draft, and the national draft. Now, incidentally, Carlton promising O'Brien and Cottrell a rookie deal takes Carlton's rookie category A list to 8 when the maximum can be 6.
Gotcha.
Carlton need to pick up 3 players to make the senior quota of 36. So what it sounds like when he said the upgrade is, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, the upgrades will be the rookie picks. So what he'll do is he will upgrade 2 rookies, burning the last 2 picks in the draft in the national draft for Carlton, which he can then promote rookies under that system to the senior spot, which then brings our category A down with 2 spaces to take O'Brien and Cottrell, and Carlton make the list quota. So I'd imagine Carlton take 1 pick, pending any changes on the list for injuries. But I'd imagine you'll get 1 pick, that's it, and a category B pick probably in the rookie draft, which or could be late. Dom Akakui could come through as well.
Yep. Okay. The last one about from there was he mentioned about the where are we here? Oh, thinking 12 months into the future. So he spoke about the strategy. He said, strategy-wise, we want to go to the draft next year and keep our picks together, especially at the top end. We've had a couple of years where we added players through the trade period, especially in that 22 to 26 age gap where we felt there was a real need. We also felt there were specific roles and traits that we brought in. Now it's time to consolidate the list. We've had a good group come through via the draft that, due to hubs, scratch matches, COVID and injuries, haven't had a good look at it yet. We'll give that group every opportunity with a new coaching group to move forward. We'll know a lot more about our list in 12 months' time and be in a position to go to the draft. So it looks like, or it seems like, the way I read that, it doesn't look like we're going to be trading that. We're not going to be looking to do what we did with Saad and Chera next year in, looking to absolutely fill that age gap. We're going to go to the draft next year and sort of resume. So it seems like we've gone heavy draft and then recruit senior players. Now we're going to go back to the draft next year, which, again, clear strategy.
Yeah, and I always try and be ahead as the draft guy here. Looking ahead to next year, you've got a lot. And when I say a lot, you've got a lot of key position players. So that would smell to me, particularly in the top 10, 15 picks, there's about 6 or 7 Victorians that are tall. About 3 of them are key defenders, which would then smell that Carlton are doing the right thing in acquiring a key defender to replace Jones, because they'll know Jones will be 31, 2-3 years left max for him, maybe 2. You get a top 10 pick, you may get lucky and you may get a Harris Andrews, you may get a Jacob Wheaterin, 2-year, blood him, get him ready. He's got a good person to learn off in Jonesy. Bang, we've got our future replacement. So good strategy for Carlton, because next year we've got one end sorted. There's just that question mark on Jones because he can't go on forever, bless him. Yes. So you can find a young, not 18-year-old, and he hits the bill. You've got a decade pillar with all of them.